Imagine swallowing your own newborn child, not out of madness, not out of hunger, but because you know, if you don't, they will destroy you. That was the daily reality of Cronus, the most powerful god who ever ruled the universe. And the terrifying part? He was right. Most people think of Cronus as just Zeus's father, a footnote in Greek mythology. But before Zeus existed, before Olympus existed, Cronus was the universe. He was a titan, one of the first divine beings born from Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. 12 titans in total. But Cronus was different from his siblings. He was the youngest, the sharpest, and the most willing to do what none of the others dared. His father Uranus was a monster. He hated his own children so much that he shoved them back inside Gaia's body the moment they were born, trapping them inside the earth to prevent them from ever challenging his power. Gaia was in constant agony, and for centuries, nobody did anything. Nobody except Cronus. Gaia, desperate, forged a massive stone sickle and asked her children to castrate their father. Every single titan refused. Everyone except Cronus. He hid in the shadows, waited for night, and when Uranus came to lay with Gaia, Cronus struck. He castrated his own father with the sickle, threw the severed flesh into the sea, and watched as Uranus bled across the sky. From that blood, the Furies were born, goddesses of vengeance. From the sea foam around the flesh, Aphrodite would eventually rise. Even in mutilation, creation followed. But as Uranus fell, bleeding and defeated, he cursed his son with his last breath. You will be overthrown by your own child, just as you overthrew me. Not a warning, a promise. Because Uranus hadn't just been defeated, he had been unmade. Stripped of his power, stripped of his divinity, cast out of the sky, he had ruled since the beginning of time. And in that moment of total humiliation, the only thing he had left was the certainty that what had just happened to him would happen to Cronus too. He had seen the hunger in his son's eyes. He recognized it because it had once lived in his own. Cronus heard the curse, and instead of running from it, he built his entire reign around preventing it. Cronus took his titan sister Rhea as his wife and became the ruler of the cosmos. The Golden Age began, a time humans would later remember as paradise. No war, no suffering, no death. The earth produced food without farming. Seasons were gentle. People lived without labor, without pain, without fear. Under Cronus, the world was, by every visible measure, perfect. And yet, behind the golden facade, Cronus was coming apart. Every time Rhea gave birth, Cronus took the child, opened his mouth, and swallowed it whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, 5 children, 5 gods, all consumed by their own father before they could take their first breaths of free air. Rhea begged him to stop. She mourned each child. She raged. She pleaded. She wept. Cronus didn't waver, because to him, this wasn't cruelty. It was the only rational option available. He had seen what ambition looked like. He was ambition. He had held the sickle. He knew exactly what a child capable of overthrowing God looks like because he had been that child. Every newborn face he looked at, he saw himself, and so he swallowed them, not with pleasure, not with indifference, but with the cold, calculated certainty of a being who understood that love and survival cannot always coexist. The curse hadn't just predicted his fate, it had already begun reshaping who he was, turning the conqueror into the very monster he had once destroyed. When Rhea became pregnant for the 6th time, she couldn't take it anymore. She went to Gaia, the same grandmother who had once handed Cronus the sickle, and begged for help. Gaia told her to travel to Crete, give birth in secret, and bring back a stone wrapped in cloth instead of the child. Rhea did exactly that. She handed Cronus a rock, and Cronus, without even looking, swallowed it. The real child was hidden in a cave on Mount Ida, raised by nymphs, fed on honey and goat's milk. That child was Zeus. Zeus grew in secret, grew strong, grew furious. And when the time came, he returned. He forced Cronus, through poison or divine intervention depending on the version, to vomit up every child he had swallowed. The gods emerged from their father's stomach, fully grown, full of rage. Then the war began, the Titanomachy, 10 years of total war between the Titans and the Olympians. Not a battle, not a conflict, a decade of the universe destroying itself from the inside. The Titans held Mount Othrys. The Olympians held Mount Olympus. Both sides hurled mountains at each other. The seas boiled. The earth cracked open. Humans, still young and fragile, watched the sky tear itself apart and had no words for what they were witnessing. Cronus fought with everything he had. He was still the most powerful Titan who had ever lived. But Zeus was smarter than force. He descended into Tartarus and freed the Cyclopes and the Cinemanes, the 100-handed giants that Uranus had imprisoned, the same beings Cronus had kept locked away because he feared them too. In exchange for their freedom, they gave Zeus the thunderbolt. With that weapon, the tide turned. One by one, the Titans fell. And when it was over, Zeus cast Cronus and his allies into the deepest pit of Tartarus. Bound in chains, buried beneath the earth, swallowed by the same darkness they had once ruled. The curse had come true in every detail. Here's what the myths don't tell you clearly. Cronus wasn't wrong. He knew the cycle. He had lived the cycle. He overthrew his father, so of course his children would overthrow him. Swallowing them wasn't madness. It was the only logical move available to a god trapped inside a prophecy he couldn't escape. But here's the deeper horror. Even if he had succeeded, even if he had swallowed Zeus too, even if the prophecy had somehow failed, what would he have become? A god who devoured every child he ever had, ruling alone over a cosmos with no heirs, no legacy, no future. Victory and defeat were both forms of destruction. The curse didn't just threaten his throne. It made every possible outcome a tragedy. The real horror of Cronus isn't that he was a monster. It's that the universe had designed him to become one. His father's violence created a son capable of worse violence. His victory created a paranoia that guaranteed his defeat. And his defeat created the gods who would build a world just as brutal, just as hierarchical, just as cursed as the one he came from. Zeus would later chain Prometheus. Hera would persecute innocents. Poseidon would drown cities out of wounded pride. The children Cronus swallowed became gods who embodied every flaw he feared in himself. Greek mythology doesn't give you heroes and villains. It gives you cycles. And Cronus is the clearest proof that knowing your fate and fighting it with everything you have changes absolutely nothing. The wheel keeps turning. It always does. If this is the kind of mythology nobody talks about, you know where to find more. Subscribe, and we'll keep going deeper.